There is a lot of misunderstanding between Africans and African Americans. There is a lot of ignorance on both sides. I wish Africans, all Africans studied African history very diligently to understand how African society evolved and how we got into the period of the slave trade and what it actually was, how it worked within Africa. And I wish they studied all that. And also, I wish they studied the history of slavery, in the Americas. We are talking about the Americas, the Caribbean, South America, Central America, the USA. What slavery was like. Africans generally don't understand it. I wish they studied the dynamics, the hardships, the pain, that the slave experience was. And they would understand, the predicament of African Americans, what they've gone through in terms of the uprisings against slavery in the Caribbean, in South America, in the USA, the various modes of resistance, and how they suffered trying to resist slavery. And then you talk about what they call emancipation, but they followed the whole period of, civil rights, and it's an unfinished agenda, racism and things like that. Africans, most of them have not studied all these things. So they don't know what African Americans have been through, what African Americans are going through. I wish African Americans studied African history so that they would understand basic things. Because there's a lot of ignorance on their side as well. They meet Africans and they say, many of them will say, you sold us into slavery. Those kinds of very simplistic, and quite inaccurate, claims. So if they understood exactly the dynamics of the slave trade in Africa, who actually did the slave trading in Africa, and how many Africans were victims within Africa itself of the wars, the conflicts, and how Africans themselves, actually, there were a lot of Africans who were slaves in Africa, but African slavery was just like domestic servitude, generally speaking. It was not the kind of horrible experience that occurred here in the Americas. So I have a sense that the Africans did not really know what's going to happen to those ones that they saw, being sold away. I don't think they could even imagine that those Africans who were taken away would be treated the way they were treated in the Americas. So it would be very unfortunate, and it is very unfortunate, that people blame Africans for the atrocities that happened here. I think if African Americans knew who within Africa, participated in slave trading, and there was just a few people, and it's a class issue, a few people with power who were greedy for wealth, they got some money from the Europeans, they collaborated with the Europeans, and so they victimized their own people. But the majority of Africans did not participate. The absolute majority did not. So I wish African Americans knew this. Also, I wish African Americans knew the experience of Africans in Africa with the colonization, because after the slave trade, there came colonial rule, and it was not fun at all. The Africans throughout the colonial period, they suffered terrible abuses. Look at the German colonies, like Namibia, the country we call Namibia, or the country we call Tanzania today, Tanganyika. It used to be called Tanganyika, and Rwanda and Burundi. We were a colony of the Germans. Look at Togo, Cameroon, and what the German colonialists did. You know, it was a horrible experience for the Africans, a lot of atrocities. You come to my home area in southern Tanzania, we will show you mass graves. The Germans hanged a lot of people. They hanged them for resisting German colonialism. And you have, in my country, various places, you know, sometimes they will show you a big, big tree, you know, and they will tell you this is where the Germans hanged people. So you look at hangings, you know, pictures of hangings in the USA, you know, lynchings, pictures of hangings. Actually, there are similar pictures from the country we call Namibia, you know, Tanganyika, those German colonies. You look at various uprisings within Africa, armed struggle against colonialism, and how bloody those conflicts were. In my own country, for example, 1905 to 1907, a big uprising against Germany, the German rule, and it was ruthlessly suppressed. Hundreds of thousands of people perished. You look at various countries in Africa and how they fought against colonialism. Algeria, Kenya, you know, Angola, South Africa, Madagascar. The bloodshed, the suffering. So if African Americans would study African history, you know, they would stop thinking that Africans were just enjoying life, you know, that Africans sold off, you know, the ancestors of African Americans, and then the Africans were just enjoying life under the mango tree, you know, dancing up and down. No, the Africans suffered under colonialism. So these are the things I wish African Americans knew about Africa. These are the things I wish Africans knew African Americans. And also, if they knew that our ancestors in the 20th century, you know, they developed some kind of solidarity, Pan-Africanism. Leaders of African Americans, leaders of the Afro-Caribbean people, and leaders of Africans on the continent. They were fighting for independence in Africa, and some of those leaders studied in the USA, like Kwame Nkrumah, you know, Azikiwe, you know, of Nigeria, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana. They formed a bond with African American leaders of the time, you know, like Du Bois, you know, George Padmore. So those people in the first half of the 20th century, our leaders, they set an example we should be following. So today, African Americans and Africans, they needed just to think again about history, recent history, and continue to follow the path of Pan-Africanism instead of all the bickering or the conflicts or the ignorance that's going on. I believe in human beings. I believe in the human spirit. I believe in the resilience of the human spirit. I believe in the potential of human beings to become good. I believe in that. In fact, that's why I'm a teacher, you know. I believe, you know, I can play a part in, you know, transforming people, absolutely. Those of us who feel, you know, we have thought about these issues, who feel we have some answers, we have a duty to tell others, to mobilize others, to promote the ideas we think are beneficial. Just like I've said, I wish African Americans studied African history. I wish Africans studied African Americans' history, which means I am very optimistic that understanding those histories will help make the relationships better. Now, So far, we have talked about Africans and African Americans, and it appears we are focusing more or less on the racial issues. Let me maybe clarify something here. When we say Africans, I think we Africans ourselves need also to acknowledge we come in different colors. We have Africans who are this color, call it dark brown or whatever. I wouldn't use the word black really. My jacket is black, but I don't see any human being with this color. So I guess we are various shades of brown. But also in Africa, we have people who have Oriental origin, India, a lot of the people in Africa, many of the people, at least in East Africa, South Africa, they have Indian heritage, and they are Africans. We have some of European ancestry, especially in places like South Africa, absolutely. A lot of, white Africans, places like Kenya, Zimbabwe, a few other places. So I just want to clarify this. When we say Africans, we Africans and those of us who are non-Africans need to acknowledge we come in different colors, and we are all Africans. Other than that, I think in addition to talking about Africans and African Americans, I think we need to acknowledge we are part of humanity. Here in the USA, we cannot just come as Africans expecting to unite with or connect with only the African Americans. We cannot. Americans as a people, Africans as a people, and the people of the world, we need to also think in terms of our common humanity. The agenda should be to build this world together, beyond race, beyond ethnicity. So, yes, we have issues between Africans and African Americans. We need to resolve those. And then we need also to talk about how we connect with other races. We have to, because we share this world, so that we can talk about the human race. That's the bigger agenda. There's no doubt about it. In fact, when I think about this, I sometimes wonder why we are promoting this, black issues so much, as if we can abstract ourselves from the rest of the world and operate only as black people. So people talk about, we need black unity, black solidarity. But when I look at the world, it won't allow us to operate, to the exclusion of other human beings. What can we do that will be purely a black thing? I don't know what it is. We could not develop a country's economy or technology. Globalization does not even recognize the skin color of who is there. These are forces that are there, and they affect all of us. So we really need to go beyond race sooner or later and think about humanity as such. And that should be the bigger agenda, I think. Yes, there's a place for racial conversations and racial issues because of history, because we have been oppressed on account of our skin color and things like that. So there's a basis for talking about skin color and identity. But I'm saying there's a bigger agenda, and we need to teach our children to think about the human race. How do they relate to people of all races? To recognize and appreciate the diversity of races and the unity of the human race.